Hello and welcome back to another episode of The Geek Seat with Ben Kliewer. I'm your host, Ben Kliewer. Joining me today in the Geek Seat is, of course, my longtime friend since the beginning of time, Detective Artimus. Detective, how you doing today? How are things?
Things are going pretty well for me, sir. I am now a married man, which means I am off the market. So you had your chance. I don't know what to tell you.
Well, considering that I was already married, I guess Listen, you put me on the spot here.
It's okay, man. You're turning red. I love it. That's all I need.
I'm so embarrassed.
What are we talking about today?
Oh, this is a continuation episode, which this is part 2. We had a to be continued. Isn't that great? It was like our 3rd episode ever, and it was already a to be continued. We did part 1 of our favorite, or we're not really our favorite, but we talk about our favorites. We're reviewing all the live action Batmen. Everybody who has played Batman in live action in the major, like in the 40s, the serials, and the major motion pictures. So we've already covered the 40s serials, the 60s with Adam West. We've covered Michael Keaton in the late 80s, early 90s. And that's where we stopped. We touched on the Flash movie from 2023 because Keaton made his reprise as Bruce Wayne and Batman in that. And now we hit the mid-90s, the greatest era ever known to man. Actually, I will say, in all seriousness, a great era for movies. And I use that term great in both the positive and the negative. Like, there were some just, like, 90s style movie making is fantastic, and some of the bad movies are just terrible. But the great movies are truly great. Batman is not included in that, in my personal opinion, as far as the mid-90s.
How dare you?
Right? So let's cut to the chase. We've had Batman Returns in 1992. Keaton made his return, Waka Waka, as Batman. And it presented us with this dark, Tim Burton really coming into his Tim Burtoniness in 1992, with Nightmare Before Christmas and Batman Returns, and really getting into that, leading all the way up to the late 90s with like Sleepy Hollow, which was so Tim Burton-y. I turn into Tim Burton when I watch it. The studio didn't like that. They didn't like that, did they, Detective?
They did not. In fact, when the toys came out for the Happy Meals for Batman Returns, there were a lot of parents complaining that it was too dark and violent. They didn't like the Tim Burton feel to it, so they wanted to go a little bit more lighthearted. So when they got Joel Schumacher, they're like, "Hey, man, can you kind of give us like a modern day of the campiness of the Adam West movies?" And that's pretty much what we got in Batman Forever, and even later on in Batman and Robin.
So let's talk about this a little bit. So, like you said, the studio's definitely big in the 90s. There was a ramp up in the 80s, huge in the 90s. We got to market these big movies to kids. Toy sales, toy sales, toy sales. That's what's going to drive our money-making machine. Parents did not want to take their kids to go see Batman Returns.
Right. You had some people dying and stuff like that, and that just wasn't exactly kid-friendly. I mean, if anything, superhero movies, well, now too, but especially back then, they were pretty much just toy commercials.
Absolutely. And we'll get into that a little bit as we go into Batman Forever, because, studio said, no, too terrifying. Danny DeVito looks grotesque and horrifying and bites a man's face off. We can't sell toys of this, so Tim, we need you to lighten it up. Tim Burton says, nah, I'm Tim Burton. I don't know if you guys heard. And so I'll stay on as EP. I'll produce this thing, but you got to get somebody else to do this because I'm not going to do, what compared to his style would be a joke, essentially. So what do they get? They get the guy who directed The Lost Boys.
Joel Schumacher.
So initially, this sounds like a home run, right? This is, okay, Lost Boys, yes. Campy, but scary, darkness to it. This will be great for Batman. Michael Keaton reads the script. He's like, nah, brah, I'm out.
Yeah, pretty much like, no, Tim, I'm out. And, the rumored, Batman Part 3 with Tim Burton, it was going to have, Robin, in there and all that stuff with, apparently Marlon Wayans.
Marlon Wayans cast as Robin.
That could be a whole cool documentary, just like the Superman Lives one too. So hopefully they can like put that together, because I'm interested in what could have been.
I would love that. And for those of you who don't know what Detective Artimus is referencing right now, there is a documentary called The Death of Superman Lives, What Happened. And it is about the Tim Burton directed Superman film that went through full pre-production, was ready to start production, and got canned, starring none other than one of the greatest actors of our generation, nay, of all time, Nicolas Cage, as Clark Kent and Superman. And if you've read anything about the story, it was super messed up. I'll stop talking about it right now, but it was like he didn't know he was an alien, and then he thought he had a tumor or something because he had these abilities. Like it took a dark turn, which of course Burton, obviously. So moving forward, Keaton's out. We got to get somebody new to play Batman. Who do we get, Detective?
The Iceman himself, Val Kilmer.
Val Kilmer. Now, Kilmer's really one of the hot actors in the mid-90s at this point.
Tombstone was sweet.
Holy shit, Tombstone. Like, I'll be your Huckleberry.
That's all I wanted to hear today. Thank you.
There you go. And I'd say you put Keaton in the bat suit, looks the part. Like, if we've got the established visual of Kilmer. If we've got the established visual of Keaton as Batman, you put Kilmer in the bat suit, and he looks the part. He looks about right. He's got kind of the mouth lines or whatever. He's got the lips. He looks very similar to Keaton when he's wearing the bat suit. And so they're going through pre-production. And then Schumacher says, and he's quoted as this, one of the most terrible things I've ever heard somebody say. He said, "Why does it have to be so dark?"
Oof, that rattles me to my core there, sir. Especially when talking about Batman here.
Now, I was maybe 10 at this point. I didn't know this was going on. But looking back, even me as a 10-year-old would have said, because it's Batman. The animated series, one of the most popular animated TV shows at the time, of course, incredibly dark.
Oh, yeah. A lot of dark and mature themes in there and stuff, even for kids.
But again, as you said, Warner Brothers comes in. They're like, we want you to make the 90s version of the 60s campy TV show, but it has to be cool and it has to sell toys. And how else do you sell toys but give Batman 17 different costumes throughout the entire movie?
Yep. And then also a bunch of neon lights.
Lots of neon lights.
Lots of neon lights.
Now, we've shit on this for a little bit now, you and I, obviously, both big Tim Burton Batman fanboys. Let's talk about the things that we actually like, or the things that are actually good about this new introduction of Batman with Val Kilmer as the Dark Knight. We've also got Nicole Kidman. We've got Chris O'Donnell, which I actually think is a great casting choice for Robin.
I didn't want to be the first to admit that, but it was pretty cool for its time.
And then we're keeping the same actor for Alfred. We're keeping the same actor for Gordon. So I think recently they've come back and tried to say, oh, these are alternate universes, when it, of course, originally wasn't meant that way, but I think it's a fun idea. But what else did we like besides, like, Chris O'Donnell?
Well, I liked how Robin kept, trying to say, hey, man, you need me, you need a partner, all this now, I think Tim Drake is famous for, telling Batman in the comic books, like, why you need a Robin. So it was cool to see that portrayed. And then how Kilmer was saying, oh, you're going to get yourself killed, all blah, blah, like the pushing up the resistance for having a Robin. I thought that was pretty cool. And I can tell that Kilmer was, really trying to do the best he could with what he had. So I liked Kilmer. He was definitely not my favorite, but, I thought he, did his best he could, especially as a Bruce Wayne too. There was a little bit of contrast there. I think a little bit more contrast than what we saw with Michael Keaton, just a little bit. But it was just kind of like, kind of standard.
I thought I went back and watched this recently. I watched both Batman Forever and Batman and Robin because I knew we were going to be talking about it.
Good idea.
And it didn't make it, like, looking back on it, looking at the time, the 90s, et cetera, didn't necessarily make the movies any better, but I kind of appreciated it a little bit more. And again, I think you're exactly right. I think Kilmer, Kidman, and we haven't even talked about the villains yet, but I think they did really well for the material they had to work with. Of course, Nicole Kidman is just like throwing herself.
Yeah, she was just right out the gate.
Just right on top of it. I mean, you know, she's like a psychologist who specializes in multiple personalities.
Right, yeah, totally. My favorite thing about Batman Forever, though, is that the very first line that Batman says is a fucking joke. I'll get drive-through.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I'm like, all right, here we go.
Shall I? What is it? Alfred says something about making him dinner, or if he needs dinner or something like that. I'll get drive-through. And they used that, I think, in the McDonald's commercial.
Oh, yeah. I think I remember that. I remember the fucking cups that came
with
the
glasses.
Yeah, the glass cups.
Yeah, those were... So Batman Returns, they just had the big plastic cups like they had with the NBA Dream Team in 92. They moved on to glass.
Yeah.
I've got the cups, by the way.
I've only had Robin and the Riddler. I've never had, the Batman cup, so that's kind of something I want to get.
Yeah, I used to have the Robin, they were like a glass mug.
Right.
And I used to have the Robin one, but I had all of the 92 Batman Returns. They're like, I don't know, 32-ounce plastic cups. And then they, like I said, they did the same thing for the NBA Dream or the Olympic Dream Team in 92. Those are all in a storage unit right now. But they're cool, they were nice artwork. But the glass, there's something kind of cool about the glass.
Everything tastes better in glass. And back then it was like $1 or something. No way that shit's going to fly now.
No, absolutely not. You're paying $8-10 at least for that. But let's talk about the villains.
Right.
Now, I am of two minds, to coin a phrase, of the two villains in this movie. We've got Two-Face, played by Tommy Lee Jones, and the Riddler, played by Jim Carrey. And on one hand, Tommy Lee Jones playing a goofy, campy villain, in my opinion, did not work at all.
No, not at all.
Just not in his wheelhouse. He just went full community theater on it. He literally was like watching a guy in a small town in the Midwest, and they're doing a community theater production, and he thinks he's really good and just goes way over the top in every scene. And everybody's like, yeah, the show was great, except that one guy, he was like way over the top. And Tommy Lee Jones is a great actor.
Oh yeah. Around the same time, Fugitive came out?
Oh yeah. I mean, fantastic dramatic actor. And when he brings that like to a comedy, like in Men in Black, works great. But I don't know if it was Schumacher or somebody told this guy, go way over the top.
Turn it to 11, man. Channel your inner Frank Gorshin, and Cesar Romero, dude.
Yeah. And to his credit, he went over the top. I don't think it worked. On the other hand, Jim Carrey as the Riddler, I think is, again, similar to like Danny DeVito as the Penguin. This was just a fantastic casting choice in the context of the movie. Because with the way this movie was designed to be, Jim Carrey, in my opinion, and my thought process and my imagination, is the only person who could have played the Riddler. And Ed Nygma.
This was peak Jim Carrey too, where he was dropping Dumb and Dumber, Ace Ventura.
Oh yeah.
The Mask all in the same year and shit like that. Going back to Two-Face real quick though, what really, like, I could get past him being a fucking, goofball and stuff, but what bugged me was that it was either one time or a couple of times where he kept flipping the coin, and Two-Face, he has to do whatever the coin says no matter what.
Right.
So he was flipping the coin and he didn't like the outcome, so he flipped it again until he got the outcome he wanted. And that is a major character flaw for their version of Two-Face.
Well, it takes the legs out from under the character.
Yeah, because his whole thing is about chance.
Yeah. And that's the idea. He's of two minds. And so he has to do what the coin says because one mind can't override the other. And that basically throws that all out the window and saying, oh yeah, one mind is going to, overdo the other. Plus, you had Drew Barrymore and Debbie Mazar as Sugar and Spice, the two female companions of Two-Face, one for each of his personalities.
So is that a 3-way or a 4-way when they bang?
I feel like it's a 4-way.
Okay.
But that's just my opinion.
To be a fly on the wall.
Right. And this was, this got to the point where I remember when I was a kid, Batman, you had the Joker in the first movie. Then you had the Penguin and Catwoman in the second movie. So you doubled up on the villains, although Catwoman is kind of an anti-hero / villain. That added something interesting to the mix. This one, you just had 2 straight up villains. Like, we know these guys, they're bad guys. There's no redeeming qualities about them. And that started this kind of trend of like, we're going to double up the villains. And I remember when I was a kid, I asked my brother why. Because my brother was a huge Batman fan. He's the one that introduced me to Batman. And he's like, well, at this point, it's just a popularity contest. And I think it was. It's like now everybody's agent is like, get me into a Star Wars or get me into a Marvel film. And so, you had Jack Black and Lizzo in an episode of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Or was it? No, it was Mandalorian. You're right. My bad. You had Jack Black and Lizzo in an episode of Mandalorian, which is fantastic, but that's what the Batman movies and that ilk were in the 90s. Get the biggest names in there that you can. That's going to sell tickets.
Star power
is going to sell tickets, and it's going to sell toys if we have 72 wardrobe changes.
Right.
And let's talk about this. He's got the new Batmobile.
Didn't like it.
It's, first of all, you're Batman. You're the darkness. You are the night. Give me a neon lit up Batmobile so everybody knows I'm coming.
Nice baby blue in there.
Right? So that's weird. Then, of course, Riddler and Two-Face come in and blow up the Batcave. So then he has to get all new stuff. There's more toy sales.
Right.
But I think ultimately, like we said, this movie isn't unwatchable. You can sit down and enjoy it, I think, even as like a hardcore Batman nerd, even as a Tim Burton Batman nerd. But it's not great. It's not something I'm going to like choose to watch on my free time. There's too much else to watch.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's more of just sort of like a curiosity factor. It is not essential at all.
Yeah, if you want to get high or drunk or something and watch this, that would be the ideal condition to watch this movie in.
Try to solve his riddles while you're drunk and high could be a little fun game in itself.
And the other thing is, these riddles were not hard at all. There was nothing clever about the riddles
right,
from the Riddler.
It didn't take me a long time to figure them out, that's for sure.
And
it did.
They're not hard. But you compare it to a movie we're going to talk about later, also featuring the Riddler, the Batman. That's hard. Those are brain teasers. Those are twisted, and you have to come up with the answer to that. These were like, I have a face, but I don't breathe, or whatever it was. And it's like, it's a clock. It's a clock.
I'm always reminded of the Frank Gorshin riddle from the Adam West movie where he's like, what comes up white and what comes down yellow and white? And Robin's like, an egg. Fucking brilliant. I was like, I don't fucking know. I was also 4, so.
Yeah, well, I guess that's true.
I'm just gonna touch down one more thing about this movie. The Riddler, his whole mind control thing was, pretty much a Mad Hatter.
Yeah.
Type of crime. The whole mind control thing in Mad Hatter. That's sort of his thing. So, I guess it is kind of cool that they try to integrate into the Riddler's MO. But for me, it's like, hey man, that's a Mad Hatter's thing. Get your own thing.
Well, yeah, I think that's the thing is. The rogues gallery from Batman, you have these very unique characters that have their own idiosyncrasies and their ways of doing things. And the Riddler could be a really interesting character on his own without a mind control device that's literally borrowed from another villain in the same universe.
Right, because, for years, all the Riddler wanted to do was prove that he was smarter than Batman. And that was his whole obsession.
Right.
Is to be like, hey, I'm smarter than you. And, he always loses.
Yeah.
Oh, final thoughts on Val Kilmer as Batman. Sum it up for me, sir.
I like Val Kilmer in general. And so it's hard for me to be like, I hate Val Kilmer as Batman. I don't like the movie. I like the idea of like Val Kilmer and Nicole Kidman starring in a Batman movie. it was just so campy and silly that I can't. It's not my favorite.
Well, the campiness is only going to get worse because the next movie, Batman and Robin, takes it to a whole nother level.
Like you were trying to think of something.
I was trying to think of like a Robin fucking, expression.
Holy macaroni, Batman.
Holy goat nipples, Batman.
Goat nipples. That is the logical conclusion to that sentence.
It made sense in my mind.
Well, that's okay. A lot of things make sense in one's mind that they shouldn't say out loud ever, ever, ever. Anyway,
So,
Batman and Robin.
and Batgirl.
And Batgirl, which is not the title of the movie, but maybe it should have been.
Yeah.
Now, we've got another recasting here.
Yep.
So this time we've kept all the same characters except Batman himself. We've recast. It's George Clooney now. Again, George Clooney just coming into his age of hotness. Like he's still hot.
This is like ER era.
This
George
is
Clooney.
like just after ER. He jumped from TV star to movie star. And so he is the hottest thing on the market. So of course you want to get George Clooney.
That's my Uncle George.
There you go. And George Clooney is, in fact, Detective Artemis's uncle, related by blood.
Correct. What did you think of him as, Bruce Wayne and Batman?
Everybody says this, and it's, I liked Val Kilmer as Batman, and I liked George Clooney as Bruce Wayne. And I'm watching the movies with this in mind. And I care. Like, I don't like either of them in either role, really. I actually kind of thought Kilmer was a little bit better as Bruce Wayne, to be honest. Now, of course, George Clooney, the thing is, George Clooney was just George Clooney in this movie.
Which was a really good Bruce Wayne.
Which is great. And that's a great version of Bruce Wayne, suave, sophisticated, full of himself, handsome, sculpted chin,
Yes.
George Clooney. I feel like the best idea behind playing Bruce Wayne was brought up by Michael Keaton when he was cast in it and he was talking about the role, which is this guy hates who he is as a human being. Like he identifies as Batman. Bruce Wayne is the mask. And so you have to play this guy with the mental instability that I have to pretend to be a playboy millionaire charming guy while the real me is actually a person who dresses up like a bat and beats people up. And I didn't get that with I got it a little bit with Clooney or with Kilmer. I didn't get it with Clooney. Clooney's just a charming guy.
There was absolutely no contrast here at all.
No. And he was just the same guy as Batman.
Right.
Which I don't believe this guy's going to beat the crap out of anybody.
I believe he's crazy. I don't take him as a serious, threat.
No, he's crazy, but in a like, my uncle's coming over for Thanksgiving. He's crazy,
Yeah.
But
that bad credit card, though.
The bad credit card. Never
Don't leave home without it.
Yeah. Again, marketing, tying it in, campaigns, huge popularity contests. Again, 17 wardrobe changes.
Making Batgirl Alfred's niece.
Yeah.
Who wasn't British.
Wasn't British. Yeah. Alfred's niece, not British, not Detective Gordon's daughter. Barbara Gordon's his daughter, right?
Commissioner Gordon.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Or Commissioner Gordon. Which was an odd choice. I don't know why you necessarily needed to do that.
Not a redhead either.
Yeah. But again, 90s. Blondes have more fun. I don't know.
Right. And then there's the whole part where they're suiting up and you see the bat nipples on Batman and Robin, but not Batgirl. I feel that was not true equality in my eyes.
Yeah. The whole bat nipples thing, like that was a huge deal at the time.
Yeah.
And that continued being a joke basically until Batman Begins came out and they rebooted the franchise.
Right. And according to Joel Schumacher, his reason for the bat nipples was, how the Romans, their armor had like nipples and shit. So I guess he was like, hey, man, this could probably work on Batman.
I don't think it worked the way he wanted it to work.
It's one of those things on paper where it shouldn't leave the paper.
Yeah, no, that's true. But again, I thought, what did you like about this movie?
I liked that every line Arnold Schwarzenegger had was a fucking ice pun.
Yeah, he was nothing but puns.
Should have called him the Punisher.
The portrayal of Bane in the movie,
They did him dirty.
they did him so dirty, and visually he looked
Great, especially
great.
when that venom was pumping in.
Oh yeah, he looked like the comic book character. You know, you read Nightfall or something like that. That's how Bane looks. But Bane is also supposed to be this brilliant, like an intelligence to
Tactician.
rival. Yeah, an intelligence to rival Bruce Wayne or any intellect in the DC universe, right? And they devolved him down to this goon.
Fucking meathead.
Yeah, he was a big just Igor, doing all of Poison Ivy's bidding, which, and again, Uma Thurman, huge star, great actress. But again, you just had absolute writing wise, personally, I thought it was absolute drivel of a script, completely visually over the top. The most fun part of this movie is exactly what you said. Schwarzenegger's ice puns. It makes absolutely no sense to have Arnold Schwarzenegger
Ice to see you
playing Mr. Freeze, apart from the fact that Freeze is a German last name. It is like Victor Freeze is a German name. So that makes total sense. But again,
I'm a cryogenic scientist.
yeah. Clearly you're not, sir. His makeup though, I thought his costumes were so cool.
Costume department was really good. Well, just on the villains, I would say.
Yeah, on the villains.
Because at the end, the heroes have like the fucking silver bat logo and shit. And I'm like, what is this? How are you gonna blend into the night?
Yeah, that again, toy sales, man.
Exactly.
I find, as much as I would not watch Batman Forever, I would not watch Batman and Robin even more. Like, honestly, like I would watch it less than Batman Forever, if that's possible.
I don't know, dude. You can get a really fun drinking game out of that.
That I would do.
There we go.
That I would do. If you're doing a drinking game, I'll watch whatever. But just for pure pleasure, just for an evening of enjoyment, Batman and Robin is probably at the bottom of my list.
All right, real quick, your thoughts on George Clooney as Batman and Bruce Wayne?
They were the same character. There was no change between Batman and Bruce Wayne, and both of them were just George Clooney, who I love, but I'd rather watch Ocean's 11.
Agreed, and there's really not much else to say. Now let's move on to one of the actual meats of the matter, Mr. Christian Bale himself in Batman Begins.
Holy shit. So I remember being a freshman in college. I'm dating myself. I was a freshman in college when the first teaser trailer for Batman Begins dropped. And it blew my fucking mind. Absolutely. I just remember it opening up, it kind of fades in, and then it's like Christian Bale, bearded, traipsing through the Himalayas with like those flags on poles and shit that he's walking through. And it's like, oh, this is like some serious shit. Like, this is not.
It was a huge, drastic change in tone for sure.
Yeah, this is not the Schumacher Batman. This is nowhere close to what we're used to. And even just tonally completely different from the Tim Burton movies, which are my favorites, And what I've always said about the Christopher Nolan Batman trilogy, which The Dark Knight is probably one of the greatest superhero movies ever made, and one of the greatest performances by a character playing a villain with the late Heath Ledger. It does tend to be, for me as a comic book fan, a series of vigilante movies with a Batman skin on them. But I feel like Nolan did respect the source material enough in making these movies. So I wouldn't look at this and be like, greatest Batman movie. but the Nolan Batman trilogy is pretty fucking awesome.
I agree. And this is also like the time where we really dive into Bruce Wayne's backstory.
Absolutely.
You know, a lot of the essentials were there. Some of the details were changed. You know, like Ra's al Ghul being called Ra's al Ghul and being played by Liam Neeson, who is, you know, not Arabic, but it's Liam Neeson. So I guess that's cool.
Yeah.
I love that guy. And we see his his ninja training from the League of Assassins.
League of Assassins.
Well, League of Shadows was in the movie, and the League of Assassins, I think, is the comic book name of it.
Yes, you're correct.
But yeah, it was really cool, man. And like the whole movie, half of the movie is pretty much just Bruce Wayne story of his arc, trying to take justice into his own hands, and we really see him development. And because of just that movie alone, I'm gonna have to say Christian Bale is the best Bruce Wayne.
I think so. In a certain sense, I don't know if I have an opinion on who's the best Bruce Wayne. Maybe I do. Maybe we'll discover that during this show. But I think they took their time, and obviously it's called Batman Begins.
Yeah.
So they took their time to develop, who is this guy? What happened to this guy? Besides the fact, his parents were killed in front of him. That does not automatically equal bat-dressed vigilante, So what happened in between parents get shot in front of him and shows up in a bat costume to get from point A to point B? And that's the real brilliance of this story. And I have so much respect for Nolan. Some of Nolan's movies, I think he's convoluted just to be convoluted, but this one, he takes his time. He respects the idea of the story and the character arc, and picking Christian Bale to play that, just fucking home run.
Yeah, fresh out of movies like American Psycho and was it The Machinist, where he lost all that weight and shit.
And that's not help. Like, I'm concerned for Chris Bale. Like, he has gotten down all the way to The Machinist. He got jacked for Batman. Didn't he gain weight to play? He gained a bunch of weight to play somebody else.
It was in that that movie that came out some years ago. That doesn't help at all. I forgot. It was the Adam McKay movie, right?
I think so. I think, gosh, I can't even think of
Jennifer Lawrence, I believe.
Yeah, I can't think of it off the top of my head. But yeah, he gained a bunch of weight to play that. And I have concerns for Chris Bale, but we're focusing on Batman. So let's talk about just the grittiness, the humanity of it, I think, was a big issue. And being a comic book fan and then looking at this, and of course looking at it through the lens of representation, having a Scot or an Irishman. Yeah, Liam Neeson's an Irishman. I almost said Scott. That would have been terrible.
Whoa, easy there.
Having an Irishman play Ra's al Ghul,
Ra's al Ghul,
Ra's al Ghul, whatever. As actually, I have been told by friends of mine who are more educated in these things than I am, depending on which language, or whether it's like Arabic or Hebrew or Farsi or something like that, the name could be pronounced one way or the other. I'm just a white guy, so I don't know that for sure. But that's and it's been a while since I was educated on that, but that's what I recall about that specific name.
I'm going based on the animated series and the Arkham games.
Right. But again, looking back through the eye, through the lens of representation, having an Irish guy play clearly what is supposed to be a character of Middle Eastern or, West Asian descent, maybe not the best idea, but again, Liam Neeson, great actor, hits it out of the park as the character, if not, the ethnicity.
Yeah. Aside from that, though, he is a great mentor kind of character actor, man. I wish he was my dad, in Fallout 3, because that was the voice of Liam Neeson.
Yeah.
Man, I would have been so much more better for this world.
Well, and again, just the development of this character, the training, the bonding, the then betrayal when, at the end of the first act, basically, of his training, when he's like, oh yeah, now we're going to fucking kill people. You got
to kill this dude now.
Yeah. And you need to do that. Otherwise you're not one of us. And he leaves because again, that solidifies kind of, and they take their time to get there. Like they take their time for Bruce Wayne to get to that point where they're like, you've trained with us, now you need to kill this guy. And we know him well enough by this point for us to know morally that's not the choice he's going to make.
Right. Funniest part about that scene, though, is that he doesn't want to kill that guy, but ends up more than likely killing a few of the ninjas when the temple burns down.
When he sets the place on fire.
Right. I don't have to save you.
Yeah. So yes, and that will come up a few more points. We already talked about that with Keaton. You know, he sticks the bomb on the guy and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's like this moral conundrum of Batman does everything he can to not kill people, except when he accidentally kills people, you know. Oops. Then he comes back to Gotham. So we see the development of, oh, here's how a guy goes from watching his parents get killed in front of him as a kid, who's got all the money in the world, to I'm going to dress up like a bat and be a vigilante for justice. How do you feel about the Batman voice?
It was definitely different when I first heard it, you know, when it came out, but I liked it, and then it just sort of progressively got worse after each Nolan film. So I think Batman Begins has the best sound to it, but I do like how, you know, Christian Bale wanted to add some sort of, you know, more like contrast to, you know, the Batman voice, making him intimidating, because that was like the theme of the movie was fear and intimidation. Right. So I think it was cool.
That's frightened me.
But now it's kind of like a parody.
Yeah. Well, and he kind of, he did different voices in different parts of the movie. Cause like when he's talking low, it's kind of like, you know, we all wear masks, that kind of thing. But then it's like when he's tracking the guys who are shipping the dolls out, you know, he's like, where are the other dolls going? And it's just like a football player screaming at his line, or football coach screaming at his players or something, except really low. And that's the part that's too much for me.
Right.
But again, these movies, fantastic. And the villains, we bring in Scarecrow in a live action movie. Dude, Cillian Murphy. First of all, this guy is a tremendous actor.
Right. And we see his dick in 28 Days Later.
Okay. Well, there is that. So if you do want to see Cillian Murphy's penis, go check out 28 Days Later.
I'm not impressed, by the way.
But if you want to see him as the Batman villain, the Scarecrow, go check out 2005's Batman Begins.
Yeah, dude, he was really good. I liked his little. At first, it was like a potato sack mask, but
yeah,
it grew on me, and I love Scarecrow. You know, aside from, you know, everyone loves Joker, I love Scarecrow and Two-Face. So I think this was a really cool first time on screen portrayal for Scarecrow.
Yeah.
And Cillian Murphy was just great.
Well, and I think, again, the development of that character, while not directly true to the stories of the comics and the way the character is in the comics, I feel like Nolan had enough respect for the comics to say, okay, here's how I'm going to portray this in this style of a movie and make it a little bit more realistic.
Grounded.
There you go. That's a better phrase. Make it a little more grounded. You know, he's a psychologist and he works with criminals, and then he has this mask, which really, until we got into more recent years where he's wearing like the gas mask and that sort of thing, Scarecrow did have basically a burlap bag for a face.
Yeah. But he's cool though, so it's all right.
Yeah. I mean, I really liked it.
I love it. It's one of my favorite superhero movies of all time. And there's also a cameo from Joffrey Baratheon.
Ah, yes. He is the child, where he's like, well, what does he say to him? There's a meme out.
My friends are gonna believe that I saw you, and he gives him like a fucking I think his grapple gun or something.
Yeah.
And then for like a long time, people theorized like, oh, that's gonna be Robin. Watch, it's gonna be Robin.
No,
it wasn't Robin. He became just a terrible, insufferable king.
A terrible king who was then murdered in Westeros.
Purple Wedding.
But what's west of Westeros? Anyway, so of course Batman Begins comes out. It's a huge hit, huge success. It changes our mind about Batman and what Batman can be on
like
screen.
The whole public perception is shifted once again, because before, you know, everyone thought, you know, Adam West, that's how Batman's supposed to be. Right. And then Michael Keaton came out and changed it. And now here we are changing it again with Christian Bale and Christopher Nolan.
Yeah.
Two Chris's.
Well, and I think it was the late 90s with the Schumacher films, Batman became a joke. He became a joke, and it became a popularity contest, as I said earlier. And it was just, surprise, surprise, the studios want to make money. And they basically assumed, as they do now a lot of times, people are stupid, they'll spend money on this, and then we'll make a bunch of money off the toys. We don't have to make something that's high quality, We just need to get everybody in the world to go see it at least once, and then we'll get all the money.
Right.
And so it doesn't matter if it's got the biggest weekend and then a complete drop off the second weekend. They made their money in the first weekend.
Yeah. And it was cool too, just because it really, they used the whole Jaws approach by waiting for the first hour to show Batman. That was a really cool build up. The whole, the dock scene, that was really good. And I like, the ending where they tease the Joker. That was one of the coolest things, at the end of the movie. I was so stoked for it.
Well, and I remember some of us, with me and my brother and some of my friends, we were like, wait, was this supposed to be like a prequel to the 1989 movie or something?
Yeah.
What's going on? And of course we were wrong, because then The Dark Knight is announced. And again, as we've had 50 times in the Batman franchise, we have a casting announcement and people are like, is this a fucking joke? But no, it was the fucking Joker.
I appreciate that pun, sir.
Waka waka. Yeah, Heath Ledger. Oh, you mean the guy from A Knight's Tale?
Oh, no. It was Brokeback Mountain they kept referencing, dude.
That's right. Yeah. Oh, you want the gay cowboy from Brokeback Mountain to play the Joker, blah, blah.
Hey, he was cool, right? He was the pitcher in that couple.
But it was, every meathead and homophobic person was like,
that I had an issue. Well, I had some issue with Heath Ledger being cast, not because of Brokeback Mountain, but because I remember some of the runner-ups were fucking Crispin Glover, which I would have loved. He would have been so creepy and cool as Joker.
The Joker.
Hey, you get your damn hands off her. And then the guy who plays Vision, I forget his name.
Oh,
Paul Bettany.
Paul Bettany, yeah.
I remember him being one of the runner-ups too, and I think those both would have been cool. And I was like, Heath Ledger. I'm like, all right, fine, I guess. But I was actually kind of rooting for Crispin Glover, so that was my only real issue with the casting.
Well, and I was confused as hell at the time because I knew him from. I don't think I ever saw Brokeback Mountain. I know I never saw Brokeback Mountain at the time, but I knew him as Knight's Tale, 10 Things I Hate About You. 10 Things I Hate About You,
yeah.
Which is fantastic, by the way.
A great Shakespearean retelling.
Love Tale of the Shrew, or Taming of the Shrew. Sorry, Taming of the Shrew. In the context of boarding school kids in the mid-90s. But yeah, and so I couldn't see it. And I don't think a lot of people could see it. And then they released the first picture of Heath Ledger as the Joker, and it's just that picture of kind of his face on a black background with the scars on his cheeks.
Yeah.
And again, just like when the first teaser for Batman Begins came out, blew my fucking mind. And I'm like, oh, again, this is serious. This is
why so serious?
Right. This is some serious shit. And then at that point, you kind of almost had a repeat of 89's Batman, where it's the Joker's the star of the show, baby. Batman's cool and all, but the Joker. And we haven't even mentioned
Aaron Eckhart.
Well, that too. I was going to say, we haven't even mentioned God himself.
Morgan Freeman.
Luscious
fox.
Luscious. It's Lucius. Okay?
Sorry.
Of course, he came up in Batman Begins, but great character addition.
Right.
Great, again, a grounded way to kind of establish how this all happened. How did this guy get a Batmobile? How did this guy get his costume?
Right. And Lucius is known for, helping Bruce Wayne, get some of his tech. But traditionally, in comic book wise, it was Alfred who made everything. It was Bruce Wayne who made, some things too. So in this approach, you can tell that Nolan took inspiration from James Bond.
Absolutely.
So,
and then on top of that, Michael Caine.
My cocaine.
if you say Michael Caine, you sound like Michael Caine saying his own name. Who just was announced recently is retiring from acting
Yeah.
at 90?
Probs.
90, 92, something like that. God bless that man. Incredible actor.
Jaws 4.
Jaws 4. Yes, the one everyone loves. I believe it's not called Jaws 4. I believe it's called Jaws
3D?
the Revenge.
No, which one is the 3D one?
Jaws 3D is Jaws 3.
Which is the one that's SeaWorld?
That's Jaws 3D.
Okay, never mind.
So there was Jaws 2, Jaws 3D, which is the one at SeaWorld, but it's not actually SeaWorld,
Right.
but it's SeaWorld. And then Jaws the Revenge, which was Jaws 4.
Oh, okay, never mind then.
And you can tell how many times I've watched Jaws 3 and 4 because I had no idea which one you were talking about. Actually, I don't even think I've seen Jaws 4. Anyway, Batman. So suffice to say, the groundedness of the storytelling, the actors, the characters, the character development. Of course, you had Katie Holmes playing Rachel in the first movie. She decides not to come back for the second movie. They recast with Maggie Gyllenhaal.
I think it was an upgrade. I didn't like Katie Holmes.
I think acting wise, it was an upgrade.
Yes.
I think Katie Holmes is cuter than Gyllenhaal, but
simmer down there, Dawson.
I know, right? But Maggie Gyllenhaal's just such a fantastic, and she's a good-looking lady. Don't get me wrong, but I can see why they did that, like casting, because they do have a similar look. But Maggie Gyllenhaal in this movie is fantastic and brings another level to the character, I think.
Right, because she was pretty flat in the first movie. She was just kind of like criticizing, Bruce Wayne the whole time, and like just kind of judged him. Like, some of us have work, and it's like, bitch, I'm Batman.
Well, but she does have kind of her arc and her at the end when she realizes that Bruce is Batman. He kind of it's not who I am underneath. It's what I do that defines me.
My favorite line was, "Why do we fall?" So we can learn to pick her
back, or
learn how we. Oh, you threw me off. I had it in my head. So we can learn to pick ourselves up again.
Okay. I thought it was.
I apply that to my life every day. And I'm still on the ground.
Well, and I have it here. I have this on my wall. Michael Jordan missed 9,000 shots. The only time you fail is when you fall down and stay down. Similar vein.
I love it. I get that tattooed on my lower back.
Just get the tramp stamp, buddy.
I have a collection going on already.
Oh, sweet. I had no idea.
Anywho, so we can spend all day talking about Christopher Nolan's Batman, which was great. The third one was definitely the least great, in my opinion.
Well, and again, they ran into an issue there with with Heath Ledger's untimely death.
Right.
I think, again, in this alternative interpretation of the characters in a grounded Christopher Nolan universe, that was a really cool interpretation of Bane. I felt like he didn't get as much of a development.
I agree, but the part where he breaks his back, that was pretty rad. It was really cool.
Well, that's drawn directly from the Nightfall comic storyline.
Yeah, except that one of my biggest issues with the Dark Knight Rises is that Batman goes to that same broken arc twice. He starts off the movie messed up, gets good, fights Bane, gets messed up again, and then has to come back. So it kind of really dragged on the movie, and I didn't like how Bane was just kind of a total simp for Talia.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, we took Bane and we made him essentially, in the end, a goon.
Yeah, but he had such a cool presence, though, so it's kind of a shame that he went out that way.
Yeah. And last thing I'm going to touch on, opening of Dark Knight Rises, the football field scene.
The opening was the airplane.
Or the opening is the airplane.
Yeah.
You're right, but the football field was in the first act, I think. Wasn't it?
Yeah, where it was like, what a lovely, lovely voice.
Where Hines Ward is running with the football and the whole field is just falling behind him and he has no idea.
You think darkness is your ally?
I was born in the darkness.
Sean Connery ass.
And of course, another Game of Thrones actor in the actual opening on the airplane.
Oh yeah, it was a Littlefinger.
Yeah, Littlefinger
that
up in
bastard.
the airplane, who asks completely the wrong questions. Why would a CIA agent be like, okay, I've got these guys, I'm going to ask them the real important questions. Why does he wear the mask? No! What are you talking about?
That is some top level security right there. He's asking all the hard questions.
Oh, jeez. So, we finished the Nolan trilogy. Joseph Gordon-Levitt ends up being Robin, kind of.
I like that name, Robin.
Yeah. You should go by your first name or middle name or whatever it was. That was, it almost felt like at that point, Nolan was like, okay, I got to wrap this up. Let me move on to,
right. To what was he did Inception in between. So what was after? Interstellar, I think.
Interstellar.
Right?
Yeah. He's like, all right, I got to wrap up this Batman shit. And I don't have Heath anymore, so I can't do it the way I wanted to. So just finish it,
And that's kind of what it felt like too. Even though it was like the longest movie of the trilogy, it still felt kind of rushed.
Yeah.
It's weird. Well, real quick though, sum it up. Christian Bale's Batman, Bruce Wayne. How'd you like him?
Very grounded, very well developed in both characters. I believed that with the development of his character through the movies, that this is how this man became a lunatic who dresses up like a bat and beats people up. Not necessarily my favorite portrayal of Batman, but the best character development, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree. I guess that it's kind of unfair to judge the other Bruce Waynes because this one had so much more breathing room.
Yeah.
And more, developmental time. But because of that, he is the best Bruce Wayne, in my opinion, even though he was Batman for less than 2 years in his career.
Yep.
Moving on.
All right. So Nolan finishes his Batman franchise, and then Zack Snyder comes in and he makes a Superman movie, right?
Right.
And
with Nolan as
a producer.
And Hans Zimmer. It was, on paper, it was a really great team.
This is a best starting lineup as you can get.
Yeah.
Not always the biggest fan of Snyder, but
I love Snyder.
He's up and down for me. Like
Watchmen was great.
I like the movie Watchmen, but you read the comic Watchmen and then you see the movie Watchmen, and there's a disconnect, I feel like.
Ooh, we're gonna have to come back to this topic because I love the movie and I love the comic too. So. But anywho, yeah, this is like fresh off the heels of, Watchmen, and he did 300, so he was already like...
300 I love.
Yeah.
I absolutely love. But again, a comic book adaptation. So he's making his name in comic book adaptations.
And Dawn of the Dead.
And Dawn of the Dead, of course. And so, did he do Sucker Punch?
Yes, he did.
But was that before?
I think it was after.
Was it after? Okay. So he comes in, he does Man of Steel, which, again, we're all super stoked for. And let's spend 10 seconds. We're already going way long. Let's spend 10 seconds talking about...
No, Sucker Punch came out before Man of Steel.
Okay, so there we go. Let's take 10 seconds to talk about a Superman movie and the tone of a Zack Snyder, Chris Nolan produced, directed film. Because people are of different opinions on this. How do you feel?
Well, like I said, I love Zack Snyder. I loved Watchmen. I loved, his movies before. So I'm like, okay, cool, man. Like, it's going to have a really good, like, visual, at least a visually looking good Superman. And because I think Snyder, he's a really good, visionary. He's just, his stories aren't that great, and his pacing always kind of feels like, off at times. But if he had, like, the right kind of writers and producers behind him, he can make like pretty much like the ultimate perfect movie, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And he did.
I would totally agree
and
with
he
that.
had the right team behind him. And I liked Man of Steel. I liked the tone. I love the soundtrack to it. And the desaturated colors, or, that's kind of like a controversial opinion. But the biggest thing about, him killing Zod at the end, I can get why people didn't like it. Honestly, it didn't bother me. So I liked Man of Steel. I liked it a lot.
I
hate Superman.
I really like Man of Steel. I like Superman. Batman's obviously my favorite. I like Man of Steel. I only own 2 DCEU movies on Blu-ray. Man of Steel and Wonder Woman.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Those are the only 2 DCEU movies I actually own. Other than that, I could take it or leave it. So this starts the Snyderverse. I'm of the opinion that Superman is hope and brightly colored and all these kinds of things, which honestly, if you take Man of Steel, just do a color correction on it, I think it'd be great.
Up saturation a bit.
Right. But it was so gray. And my favorite part, of course, as a huge fan, is the part where Clark Kent is wearing a Kansas Jayhawks t-shirt while watching his dad get killed by a tornado, which again was a weird...
He's like, it's okay, just let me die, man.
Right.
I'm over this marriage.
Like, that's the thing. It's like, obviously, the tension in that scene is you don't want him to see that you have superpowers, or dad doesn't want you to show that to other people. But was it necessary to kill off Pa Kent?
In the grand scheme of things, I don't think so. He should definitely be kept alive. He didn't have to be, Uncle Ben.
Yeah, he doesn't die in the comics. Like, Ma and Pa Kent are hanging out all the time in the comics. So
I mean, I guess, like, for the sense, like, thematically, it probably worked for what they wanted to convey, but I didn't like that part.
I feel like that's such an easy go-to. I don't want to call it cheap, but it's such an easy go-to, and we already have that established, like, concrete established in other heroes lore, like, like you said, Uncle Ben, and Batman, of course, that it seemed like it was too easy of a go-to to give him motivation. So, right. But then Comic-Con comes around a couple years later, right? And they're like, oh, we're going to talk about the next Zack Snyder Superman movie. People are like, cool. And there's rumors floating around, right?
Yeah.
There's rumors. Maybe this hero is going to appear in it. Maybe that one. And some people are saying, oh, maybe they're going to introduce Batman in this one. And some people are like, I don't know. They're probably going to start Batman off with his own movie.
Logically.
And to be honest, I think that Nolan Snyder team, that did Man of Steel, like that, for me, you say, okay, this team is either going to make a Batman movie or a Superman movie. I'm just like, Batman. They're going to make Batman. That's the obvious answer. They went with Superman first, but they know everybody loves Batman. Of course, Superman is like Superman and Spider-Man are the two most popular superheroes in the world, followed incredibly closely by Batman. So they announced this movie at San Diego Comic-Con. I remember watching the video online, somebody's cell phone in the audience. They got the guy who comes up, he reads the quote, but it's a Lex Luthor quote. And then they flash the Superman logo on the screen, and then a Bat logo fades in behind it.
The Dark Knight Returns Batman logo.
Oh yeah. Well, I've got it sitting over there on the shelf. Where is it? Where's my Dark Knight Returns? It's on there somewhere. Oh, there it is. Anyway.
Okay.
I remember like the big fat chunky Bat logo.
Yeah.
You remember? Sorry.
No. I was just saying, yeah, no. I remember, like, watching that video as well, and I'm like, oh shit, like, we're finally going to see, Zack Snyder take on Batman. Cool. I was super excited. And then, well, what happens next? There comes that casting that plagues every sort of, like, Batman movie.
Every single time. Every Batman movie. Here's a casting announcement. Rawr, the end of the world.
I'm gonna go ahead and say I fucking hated it. I don't like Ben Affleck. He's just kind of the same in every movie. I think he's a better when he plays an asshole or something, like any Kevin Smith movies. Great.
Well, I love the Kevin Smith movies.
But it was another one of those things where, like, I felt that I preferred some of the runner-ups. Josh Brolin was one of the runner-ups. I was like, okay, cool. But my personal choice at the time, and it still is, it'll never happen, but John Hamm has been my Batman casting for
I remember
for a decade now, and I would love
rumors.
it. He said he was down for it, and now he's too old. But that was who I was, hoping for. It didn't happen, and so my thing was like, oh fuck, everyone knows who Ben Affleck is. It's not going to be sort of like I won't be able to take it seriously because it's like it's fucking Ben Affleck,
Right.
It's like making Brad Pitt Superman. It's like it's fucking Brad Pitt.
I get it. I understand that. I don't entirely agree.
Let's hear it.
So I'm just, for the sake of time and everything, I'm just going to lump together any movie that Batfleck is in. You've got Batman v Superman,
Suicide
Squad for like 30 seconds,
Justice League,
another Justice League, which was the same movie but not the same movie,
and The Flash.
And he's the same Batman in all of these. So let's just talk about the arc here. Because there wasn't really a Batman movie.
No.
They didn't do a Batman movie. He was a side character in 4 movies, essentially.
Yeah.
And which is like also a what the hell decision. Like, oh yeah, one of the most popular characters in DC Comics. He's going to be our side character in all these movies. He's just going to show up.
It's just a real testament to the mismanagement at Warner Brothers with their, comic book IPs, which they've had the rights for all of them for years.
Yeah.
And this year they are fumbling it, just, obviously trying to catch up to Marvel and the success of the Avengers. And it showed they had all the potential to make $1 billion movie easily with Batman v Superman, something we've never seen before. And it was like, okay, it was all right. I mean, if you watch the Ultimate Director's Cut, I guess it's really good, but it should have been so much more.
Yeah. And here's my thing with Batfleck. I respect Ben Affleck because the only reason he did Daredevil back in the day
Oh my God.
is because he was like, I want to play Batman and I'm never going to get to play Batman. So I guess I'll be Daredevil. And then he got to play Batman. And this is a guy who, and I'm going to do my best Boston accent. That was terrible. But he was like, this is a guy that fucking reads the comics. All right. Like, he actually loves Batman, loves the comics. He's as big of a nerd about Batman as we are. And that, I think, is one of the reasons why I appreciate him as Batman. I think, of course, being a tall, jacked dude with the dark hair that coiffs perfectly has a great look for comic book Bruce Wayne. And, of course, he got jacked. I thought the bat suit, the first time we saw images of the bat suit, and it's got the short ears, and it's, of course, very Dark Knight Returns reminiscent, and a little reminiscent of the 60s show, because he had the real tiny bat ears in the 60s show, but very much Frank Miller, Dark Knight Returns style. And he is supposed to be playing an older, more grizzled, later,
just over it
Batman. And I thought that was cool. What I didn't like I hated Batman v Superman. Like, I went and saw it in the movie theater. And I hated it. And part of it was, I know there's the line in there where he's like, the rules have changed, Alfred, or whatever. But he's like driving with the Batmobile and he like harpoons a car full of guys and then drags it behind the Batmobile and slams it into a gas tanker truck and it explodes. And I'm like, that's just blatant blowing people up. Like, that's not collateral damage. That's,
you thought you were trying to hide it,
right? And there were a lot of cool ideas. The Robin costume that was spray painted,
that was really cool
in the Batcave.
The whole
really
warehouse
cool.
scene.
The whole warehouse scene. Like, we actually saw Batman like hiding up in the corner of
Yeah.
the room and then swinging down and beating people up.
There was a lot of cool moments for sure.
The scene where he saves Martha, even the stupid justification of Martha, why did you say that? That was the dumbest. Just dumb.
I felt like at that moment the movie just kind of came to a screeching halt.
Like,
and it did take me out of it for sure.
And it became the hugest joke. And I don't know who let that happen. Like, who was like, oh yeah, no, that's a really good idea for a character motivation.
Right, to make them feel connected. That was their reasoning, I guess.
Oh, our moms have the same name.
We are the same, like two sides of the same coin kind of thing.
You don't get that from your moms having the same name. That's not... I
think that was just their reasoning. I didn't agree with it either.
You could have... I just feel like you could make it so much more interesting than that, and more complex than, hey, your mom's name is Martha, my mom's name was Martha. But it led to one of the coolest Batman scenes I've seen on screen, which was him rescuing Martha and doing cool Batman shit.
Yeah.
To a bunch of henchmen.
See, Zack Snyder knows how to composite a really cool fight scene, dude. He can make it like brutal. That's why I think he'll be good for Mortal Kombat, because Mortal Kombat doesn't really require a good story.
Yeah.
So,
well, and I think that's the thing. Like, Zack Snyder, there's a YouTube page called Every Frame a Painting, and it's about movies and movie editing and framing and everything.
Okay.
Zack Snyder, you can take a still from any movie he's ever made, and it is a goddamn work of art.
Yeah, dude, he's so good at visuals.
He's so good. And that's like, he's not, at least I haven't seen so far, I don't feel like he's great at story or character development necessarily, but man, he makes a pretty picture.
Yeah, dude, his shot composites are just so like, it just kind of brings you into whatever he's doing. And even if he's doing like excuse me, the Watchmen stuff, a lot of the shots were pretty much panel for panel.
Yeah, and
so I love
Watchmen.
That.
I love to watch Watchmen because it's like what you imagine in your brain when you're reading the comic. You see it in reality up on the screen. But yeah, so I say this about the DCEU, the Snyderverse, whatever you want to call it. I feel like the casting, to my notion, was spot on. I love Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. I think Henry Cavill,
Like
Cavill.
travel.
All right. I think Henry Cavill as Superman is amazing.
He's such a cool dude.
And I like Ben Affleck as Batman. I think visually and just the fact that he's passionate about the character. We got those three together in this movie, which was awesome.
That was super crammed though, and then they fight Doomsday at the very end.
Yeah,
that was probably to me like the biggest problem is that so many storylines were just crammed into it instead of like letting it take its time.
Well, and that was the problem because they wanted to catch up to Marvel and Disney, and instead of taking the time and earning it like Marvel and Disney did, they just wanted to jump into Avengers right off the bat, basically.
Yeah.
And, you know, but Marvel and Disney took what, 4 or 5 years to earn, you know, getting to Avengers?
Because Iron Man was 2008.
Avengers was 12. Yeah,
that's correct.
But, you know, they came out with a handful of movies before that. You know, they had Iron Man 2, Thor 1, Captain America 1, and then they get into Avengers. They give these characters development. It almost felt like this one where they were like, okay, we gave Superman development and then like, well, everybody knows who Batman and Wonder Woman are, so just throw them in there.
Right, and let's kill Superman at the end.
Yeah, and that, again, was taking several different comic storylines and just mashing them together, and it didn't work. And it shouldn't have worked, and it didn't.
Yeah, and then, for me, another bad thing about this movie is that, you mentioned that the casting was good, which I agree. I got over the fact that, you know, Ben Affleck was Batman. So in the end, I thought he was okay. Mm-hmm. He was not my favorite. He was not the worst. He was definitely not the best. But the worst casting was Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor.
Oh yeah, that was awful.
Where he was just being a really bad Joker. Everyone has to be a crappy Joker if they're not the Joker. It seems.
I mean, you've had some pretty great performances across media of Lex Luthor. Gene Hackman. Rosenbaum. Spacey. I actually like Superman Returns. Spacey, you can say what you will about him. He's in prison now, but as an actor, good work. And I thought it was supposed to be a continuation of the Reeves and Hackman Superman and Luthor, and I thought he did. I really enjoyed watching him in that movie. Eisenberg was just, why?
Hot off the heels of The Social Network, I guess.
I guess. And then, we move on. We have Snyder gets let go from Justice League, and they're like, and again, in the most transparent studio move ever, they're like, oh, why don't we just get Joss Whedon, who made the Avengers, in here?
Oh boy.
And the movie, the franchise already didn't know what it wanted to be, and it lost even more of that in the switch between Zack Snyder and Joss Whedon.
Right.
And so we got this goofy ass weird movie that I didn't even go see in the theater. I watched it at home after it came out on stream.
Dude, another movie that should have been like an instant, billion, because it's the Justice League, something we've never seen before. And it's, it's one of those projects that's been trying to come out for years, with that George Miller, one in the mid 2000s,
right,
where he wanted,
oh yeah,
Justice League Dark, I think it was.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to say that, box office dictates quality, because that's absolutely not true. But I mean, this should have been a smash blockbuster hit.
Well, and that's the thing. I've read quotes from people talking about conversations they had with the executives at Warner Brothers, and people in high up positions at Warner Brothers that make the decisions on these. And the sentiment was essentially, people were like, well, we need to do another pass on the script. And the sentiment from the brass was basically, it's a Batman movie. People are going to pay to go see it. It doesn't need another pass, And so they didn't care about quality. They just cared about put something in the movie theater and people will give us their money.
Right.
And that was the biggest issue with this. They didn't want it. They didn't care if it got developed or not. They just wanted bright flashing colors on the screen.
Right. And it reminds me of this expression that my film teacher told me, and it sticks with me every time. And it's, if you fail to plan, then you plan to fail.
Yep.
And this is exactly what happened.
And it was, they looked like a bunch of Johnny-come-latelys trying to catch up to Marvel. They made no effort to hide that. even hiring the guy
Who worked with the Avengers,
who made Avengers to do this one. But moving on, casting choices. Khal Drogo,
Jason Momoa.
Despite the fact that he looks completely different from the comic book character, that makes sense to me to be Aquaman. Like, of course he's going to be like a buff Samoan dude who rules the ocean, right? Like, that just makes sense.
Yeah.
I really liked Aquaman. It's probably like my top 3 Snyderverse movies are Man of Steel, Wonder Woman, and Aquaman.
As a Batman fan, I know internally that kills you.
It does.
Saying you prefer Aquaman
me.
than Batman.
But they made Aquaman interesting and cool and fun.
Yeah.
And then, the casting of Ezra Miller as the Flash, I found him quite charming initially. Obviously, Ezra Miller has a bunch of issues. We talked about that in the last episode. But that was kind of the most off of the castings for me. But again, this thing had all kinds of issues. You've got problematic people. You've got problematic studio execs. The young man who played Cyborg just straight up left.
Ray Fisher.
I know him. Why? Not personally, but I know him. Like, why couldn't I remember his name? I've had trouble with that both of these episodes. Like, oh yeah, the guy who played the guy in the thing.
That one guy in the movie, yo.
But he left because of studio and creative stuff, and treatment was a whole thing. Too. And that was a whole fucked up thing. You've got Amber Heard, who's part of this thing. You've got,
my dog stepped on a bee.
Yeah. But, and then Wonder Woman 1984, I don't know. Like, Patty Jenkins, you're a magnificent storyteller, a wonderful director.
Wonderful.
Right? What the hell happened with Wonder Woman 1984? Like, I don't understand that at all. Because Wonder Woman was so good, and Wonder Woman 1984 was so not good.
So are you asking, you wonder what happened?
I wonder what happened, woman. No, that didn't work.
The Wonders.
So, the Oneaters.
Yeah, I was hoping you'd say that.
Right? So, now, fast forward. Right now, we're in 2023 as of recording this show, right?
AD.
This episode. AD, of course. We are not in ancient times. Coming to you live from Sumeria. And so now the Snyderverse is wrapping up. They're doing Aquaman 2, and then they're done. Now we step back about 2 years, right? 2021. We get another new interpretation of Batman. They're throwing Batman out here since the beginning of the century, since the new millennium. Yeah. They just started throwing Batman.
More Batman.
Right? We had between 1940 and 2000, we had 6 Batmans. That's 60 years. In the last 20 years, in a third of the time, we've had 1, 2, 3 Batmen.
And a fourth one
coming with the
Brave
way.
And the Bold. Yeah. It's like in the Keaton one where he's like, "Have you shipped 1 million of those things?"
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Ship them all.
Ship them all. Now we're moving on to the Batman with, again, another casting controversy. Hey, we're getting the kid.
Dude, this is just a curse, I guess.
We're getting the kid from Twilight to play Batman. Whoa, everybody up in arms.
I was one of them. I mean, it wasn't the end of the world, but I was like, are you fucking kidding me? It was like, it was just kind of like, Ben Affleck all over again. Like, people are just not going to take it seriously because it's fucking Twilight. And if you would have told me, like, fucking 10 years ago that the guy from Twilight would make a great Batman, I would laugh at you and probably, assault you. But, but now here we are, and I'm like, fuck, man, he's like my second favorite Batman.
Right?
He was so good.
Now, dude, and that's the thing, because the logical progression is a vampire turns into a bat, right? But yeah, again, and now this time I thought about it. When I first heard Robert Pattinson's going to play Bruce Wayne and Batman, I thought to myself, this keeps happening over and over again.
Let it play out.
So let's see how this shakes out before you put any kind of judgment on it. And I'm glad that I came from it, regardless, I would have had the same reaction when I saw The Batman, which was so fucking good.
Oh, are we here now? Are we at the Batman?
We're at the Batman.
All right, get us there. Talk about it.
Okay, so you remember how I said that with the Christopher Nolan movies, they were like vigilante movies with a Batman skin on them. And he had respect for the source material, but put his own spin on it.
Right.
Watching The Batman felt to me like reading a comic book, a Batman comic. It gave me that same feeling. I felt like a real serious Batman comic.
Right, like a real detective noir feeling, like Seven.
And it didn't take place in the 40s. He's got camera contact lenses, for God's sake. But it had that noir feel to it. And my God, Zoe Kravitz.
Yeah.
As Catwoman. My God. What was it? Somebody posted like the first time Zoe Kravitz came onto the screen in the Batman, a woman in my theater audibly moaned. Like, and the dynamic between the two of them, it wasn't sexual, but it wasn't. And that's great that it was complex. And with the Bruce Wayne character, I didn't get as much playboy, full of himself, handsome man on the town feel. He kind of felt like he was very much an introverted recluse. Yeah. And kind of a not whiny, but like there's kind of those scenes when he's in the Batcave, which is like an old subway tunnel basically. And he's real chippy with Alfred. It's not that partnership that we're kind of used to, but it was still interesting and it still played into the character, and he's figuring out, this was based off Year One and The Long Halloween and that sort of thing. And so he's still figuring himself out. He's still figuring everything out. But him as Batman, and again, the first time I saw the Batman costumes with the real narrow, pointy ears, I was like, what is this? But as you can see on my wall,
I'm staring at it right now.
But that scene when the guys in the clown makeup are like harassing the guy on the subway platform,
the opening,
and you just hear him like walking down the
boots,
hall.
yeah, it just kind of comes out of the shadows.
Oh, like that was so cool, and that was so Batman. For those of us who read the books, who read the comics, it's like I said, I got that same feeling I get when I read the comics. When I watch a Tim Burton Batman movie, it's not the same thing. I love Tim Burton Batman movies. Michael Keaton is my Batman. But this movie just felt right in a lot of ways. And so, I don't know, man.
The movie was 3 hours. So when I saw that, I'm like, fucking hell, dude. Like 3 hours, that's a lot. But when you watch it, Matt Reeves, he's really good with his pacing. And it's not a huge difference, but like for me, it felt like it was maybe 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
I mean, some points kind of did slow down a bit, but it did not feel like a 3 hour movie. I didn't lose interest in. In fact, I saw it in theaters like 3 times.
Oh my gosh. I only saw it in the theater once. And this was right after, like, this was in like pandemic, like rules were kind of still in place. You had to wear the masks and everything. And so, but I've watched it a couple times at home. And it's such a commitment that I can't just like watch it every week like I might, some other movies. And it is heavier. And let's talk a little bit about the villains. They did double up again, but not in the way they did in Batman Forever. Penguin's kind of a side character in this. And then the brilliant thing that they're making a Penguin TV show for HBO, Max. Starring him to kind of develop his character and then come back to
his performance and the makeup artist and the costume designer, dude, they really knocked it out of the park. I was like, that's Colin Farrell. What the fuck?
With this like Brooklyn accent.
Yeah, it was so good, dude. That should have been like an Oscar nom.
Right. And the best meme I ever saw was a picture of Colin Farrell as the Penguin. And it said, imagine spending all that time and money making Colin Farrell look like Richard Kind when you could have just hired Richard Kind. But great performance, and you see the Penguin not as this, alpha, apex villain. He's kind of
It's still his rise.
yeah, it's his rise. And then the other thing that was really fucking scary, the Riddler, is like there are guys that are kind of like this that exist in real life.
Absolutely. I'm one of them.
And but he was more of a, I don't want to say a terrorist, but he kind of was
Like a really like social outcast, who just lives on the internet, the Redditors, I assume.
Right. And I thought that was a really interesting angle to really modernize this. And it was the balance, like Matt Reeves' balance between giving it the noir, old school detective feel and making it a very modern movie. Like, yeah, this crazy guy in this green leather mask and saran wrap can get all these followers online, and and it made it more scary because it almost made it more realistic, more grounded.
Right. And then just the performances all around, Paul Dano was great as the Riddler.
Oh, God. And he's such a good actor.
Yeah,
and,
I always think of Little Miss Sunshine.
Well, he's so good at being like a creep.
I can get that.
And yeah.
Also, Jeffrey Wright was a really good Gordon.
Wright.
I loved. For me, it's Gary Oldman all day, every day.
I love Gary Oldman,
but Jeffrey Wright was so cool. And he brought like a different like element to Gordon as well, like compared to Gary. I was going to say Gary Oldman, that he was actually kind of funnier.
Yeah. Well, and we didn't even touch on Gary Oldman when we talked about the Nolan films. There's just so much that's good in all of these. But yeah, Jeffrey Wright, first of all, a black Commissioner Gordon, what is he, a detective or a captain?
I think he was captain.
He was Captain Gordon in this, but switching him to a black guy doesn't matter, obviously, in any stretch of the imagination, but Jeffrey Wright was just so good.
Yeah, dude.
So good as this character.
No issues at all with it. I loved it. Especially his interactions with Batman, like the whole thumb drive thing. It was just
thumb drive.
It was good. It was a lot of like dry humor, deadpan stuff, and it all worked, really.
And it didn't have a whole lot of jokes in it, but when it did, they landed, and I didn't have a problem with it not having a whole lot of humor. I've talked to some people that were like, man, there wasn't enough levity, but I thought they did just little pops of it here and there, and it worked out perfectly, because I don't necessarily want a lot of levity in my Batman movies. We saw how that happened in the late 90s.
Right.
It was all a joke. And now some people might say it's not enough joke, but I really liked it.
I think they're just like Marvelized.
Yeah. And that's the thing, and Marvel's so good at popping jokes in there all throughout the movie. But I do like the idea of let's handle Batman with more of a serious tone and not make it a big gag fest. Well, that didn't sound right.
My mind immediately went there.
Yeah, no, I figured. I knew who I was sitting across from, so yeah, well, okay. Well, we didn't necessarily need to go there, but you're Detective Artimus, so we did. But yeah, it's not a big joke fest. We don't necessarily need to make it a big joke fest because Batman it's a means of dealing with some heavy issues. These people want to kill people. They want to send messages, and this guy is the guy to stop them,
Right. It's also like the first Batman movie to have 5 villains in there. You had Carmine Falcone.
Well, yeah.
You had Joker in there for a second. You had Riddler. You had Penguin. You had Catwoman.
Well, Catwoman, again, more of an anti-hero than a villain.
I think she's more classed as a rogue.
She is
traditionally.
Definitely, yeah, I guess so. But just and again, the way they're taking superhero movies seriously now as performances and entertainment and a means of good storytelling.
If you just approach your material seriously, then people will take it serious as well.
Yeah. And I mentioned in the last episode, Michelle Pfeiffer should have gotten nominated for some kind of award for her portrayal of Catwoman, if not an Oscar. of course, the Oscars wouldn't touch a superhero movie in the 90s.
Ew, Reginald, look at this superhero movie getting an Oscar nomination.
But now you've got people in superhero movies getting Oscar nominations.
Heath Ledger.
Well, you had Heath Ledger. That really started off, but even more recently, Angela Bassett nominated for Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Literally, you know, it as and probably should have won, let's be honest. But you know, she best supporting actress in a superhero movie for the Oscars. Like, are you kidding me? Like, how far we have come in less than 25 years. Of course, you know, 25 years is still kind of a long time, but the older I get, the shorter it seems. I am so looking forward to the Batman Part 2, as well as the Penguin series on Match.
Yeah,
give
me more of this Matt Reeves world.
The Matt Reeves
verse.
Yeah, the Matt Reeves Bativerse.
Pattinson.
The Bat. Well, and that's the other thing. I like the mashing up of the names. Batfleck, Pattinson,
Beaton.
Nah, it doesn't work. Okay, doesn't work as well. But
Bilmer,
more
Booney,
Bilmer, Booney, Bale,
Best,
Bailtman. No, that doesn't.
Bateman.
No, that's a totally different person. But so there's not enough that we can say about the Batman and Matt Reeves, the Batman. So looking forward to the Batman Part 2. Final thoughts on the Batman before we move on to the next very short subject.
Santa Maria. Okay, well, I loved Robert Pattinson, his portrayal of Batman. It was, I loved his seriousness of it. I loved the detective aspect. And there was a few moments that really felt Batman-y to me. So like where he's with Catwoman and he puts on the lenses on her, and you think that like he's gonna kiss her or show any affection, and she's like open for it, and he's like, okay, yeah, it looks good. And he kind of like leaves her hanging. So I thought that was pretty cool. You know, he's pretty oblivious to that sort of like emotional thing. A little
bit of the disconnect, yeah.
Right. So I thought that was cool. I was all right with his long hair. His face should have got blown up in that scene where he solves the riddle. Maybe some scars, whatever. That's fine. He
showed up like perfectly fine.
He had that Batman. He had that Val Kilmer cape that was like fireproof, I guess. But there's like some nitpicks here and there. But honestly, man, it's like one of my favorite superhero movies, Batman movies of all time. And I'll be the first to say it, I was wrong about Robert Pattinson. God damn that bastard. I wish I had his head of hair.
You know, I'm a lifer for the Tim Burton Keaton movies, but it might be my favorite Batman movie.
Yeah, maybe, you know, as Keaton kids, we might have a little bit of the nostalgia glasses on.
Sure, absolutely.
But yeah, I don't want to agree to this now, but yes, as of now, Robert Pattinson is my second. Will he be my first? I don't know.
I still like Keaton as Batman, but I think I like the Batman better than Batman and Batman Returns.
Yeah. Well, who do you? Well, actually, before we get to that, what did you think of Robert Pattinson overall?
I liked him as Batman. Like I said, he's a different Bruce Wayne. He's kind of a, you know, more chippy. But they did develop that relationship with Alfred a lot more. Again, Andy Serkis, another Alfred.
Man, it's either him or a fucking Scar from Lion King. What is it? Jeremy Irons. He was such a good Alfred too.
He was. I did like Jeremy Irons as Alfred. But yeah, and God, Andy Serkis's career. He went from playing Gollum to everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Bruce Wayne, I feel like that's a character that's going to be more developed as this Matt Reeves Batman universe moves on. But really loved him as Batman. Felt very real. Like, this guy's a little bit nuts and he dresses up like a bat and beats people up with this justice, this righteous anger, you know. And the relationship, the chemistry between him and Zoe Kravitz as Batman and Catwoman is just chef's kiss, you know. But yeah, love it. Absolutely love it.
I think it's cool too, because we mentioned with Keaton that, you know, he wanted to be Batman at all times and Bruce Wayne was the mask. And we kind of get this one right here too.
We do.
And at the end of the movie, he realizes that he can use his Bruce Wayne identity to help further his Batman career. So I thought that was really cool that he learns that it's not just about vengeance. You know, it's about just saving people and, just doing the right thing and not just, fucking people up.
Right. And I think that's a great layer to put onto Batman because it is present in the comics, but not always in the movies.
Right. And the music too, man. It's like you have Danny Elfman, number one, Hans Zimmer, very close second. Then you have fucking Michael Giacchino with a dun 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 dun. It's just a simple little motif, and it just works.
Yeah, it's really good. And very last comment
for
realsies this time. My God, the Batmobile.
Oh yeah,
it's a fucking, what is it? A Barracuda or a Charger?
It was probably a Charger.
I have it up there. I think it's a Charger.
It's a muscle car for sure.
And I just read after the movie came out, there was an article, I think it was on BuzzFeed or something, but the title of the article was just, "My God, the sound the Batmobile makes." And that chase scene, incredible. I actually interviewed some of the digital special effects creators from Weta.
Oh, cool.
Who worked on the
Peter Jackson stuff, right?
Yeah. So that's Peter Jackson's studio that he helped develop for Lord of the Rings and that sort of thing. And now they get contracted for a ton of movies that require special effects. The car chase scene where he's chasing the Penguin through the streets in the rain, they shot it. It was not raining when they filmed it.
Holy shit.
All the rain, all the water effects, except for maybe a few puddles because they were shooting it in England where it does rain.
Right.
But all the rain was added in digitally with special effects.
That's pretty fucking crazy.
Afterwards. Yeah.
Well, fooled me for sure.
Right? So, and that's the incredible work that happens on these movies. Now, we've covered the Batman, probably our most favorite Batman movie, but we've got more coming up because
we got the Batman Part 2.
Batman Part 2, yes.
And then also The Brave and the Bold by Andy Muschietti, the Flash director.
Yeah. So now we have a new era. It's no longer the Snyderverse. It's no longer the DCEU. They realized that they fucked up.
The Gunverse.
And they brought in James Gunn. James Gunn.
That's correct, yes.
All of a sudden, it didn't sound right for some reason.
James Pistol.
They brought in James Gunn. The guy who, of course, he got, back in the day, he did Slither, which is a great film. I love Slither. Is kind of a mid-level director in Hollywood for a number of years, then gets tapped to do Guardians of the Galaxy for the MCU.
It's a huge risk.
Huge risk, both on director and on the property. Like, who's ever heard of Guardians of the Galaxy? That's probably why they gave it to him. They're like, well, if this doesn't work, then nobody cares. Hits it out of the park, obviously. Becomes integral to the development of the MCU. Finishes his run on Guardians of the Galaxy and every other Avengers tied thing, basically. And DC, Warner Brothers, sees this and they're like, well, shit, we need somebody like James Gunn to run DC.
Well, this is after he got fired.
Well, yeah.
His old tweets thing.
So, yeah, he got fired because of things he said 20 years ago, because obviously people can never learn, change, or become better. Then he got rehired to finish up at MCU and basically was soured by that experience, I think.
Yeah.
And Warner Brothers is like, we need somebody like James Gunn to run the DC film universe.
Right, because he already did the Suicide Squad.
Right.
And then I was gonna say Peacemaker.
And of course, Suicide Squad, very bad. The Suicide Squad, better. Kind of a soft reboot, I guess you could call it. And then Peacemaker, the TV series, which was hilarious and awesome. Anyway, my dogs are barking in the background, telling us that we need to wrap up this show. But we have had an announcement. Andy Muschietti, is that how you say it?
Probs.
Maybe. Doing Batman, the Brave and the Bold. And we're hearing rumors that this is going to focus around Batman and Robin, who is actually going to be Damian Wayne, the son of Bruce Wayne, and Talia al Ghul, the daughter of Ra's al Ghul, the Demon's Head, and which is the newest storyline in the comic books. That's the newest Robin, so to speak. And of course, he's been around for a number of years now.
Yeah.
But of the five if you count Dark Knight Returns, but of the four Robins in the continuity, let's say, he's the most recent and the most current. And so that'll be interesting to see that. Who are we looking at for Batman in this new movie? They haven't made any announcements. All we have is the rumor mill. Who would you like to see?
Well, he's been in my casting pocket for a while. I like Wes Bentley.
Wes Bentley.
Yeah, the dude from Hunger Games. He was the game master. He has that kind of classic Bruce Wayne look. You could probably put a little bit more bass in his voice, but I think he's a good choice. Nolan recommended him for Batman, so I would go with Wes Bentley because I know nobody else.
Oh yeah, I've seen some people have been talking about Nicholas Hoult playing Batman. I love Nicholas Hoult as an actor. I think he could do it. I'm not particularly interested in it, but I think he could. Oh yeah, some people have mentioned Kit Harington from Game of Thrones,
but he knows nothing.
Again, I think he could do it and do a great job. Not particularly interested. Also from Game of Thrones, Richard Madden. Little bit more interested maybe in Richard Madden.
I don't know, man. Like they're kind of like my height, like 5'7" and stuff, and we don't need any more short Batman.
Well, I guess that's true. I mean, Ben Affleck is 7 feet tall.
Yeah, he's
just kidding.
Taller than Henry Cavill.
They also talked about what's his name? Regé Jean Page, whatever. The guy from
Bridgerton?
Bridgerton, yeah. Of course, again, casting a person of color as Batman. Dude's
got suave.
He's got suave. I think he could do it. I would be interested in that. Will Poulter is on the list.
What's his name in Marvel?
Oh, he's
Adam Warlock.
Adam Warlock, yeah. I remember hearing Joseph Quinn, who played Eddie in Stranger Things.
Another short actor.
Another short guy. Of course, for years, everybody's like Jensen Ackles. We want Jensen Ackles. He's not going to get cast.
He's too old now.
Jake Gyllenhaal, also too old. Jamie Dornan from 50 Shades of Grey. I would not.
Whoa, now hold on there.
That. I wouldn't be. Who else has been out there? I'm just reading some of the guys on this list I haven't even heard of. But yeah, I don't know. I think I've learned over the years to not cast somebody in my head before a casting announcement is made. I don't buy a Batman comic book assuming here's what the story is going to be before I read it. I just go in and be like, okay, I'm going to read a new Batman story. And then I enjoy it. And so I think for me, I just want to, it's going to happen. They're going to cast who they're going to cast regardless of what I think.
Right. We're just going to get disappointed.
Right. And so I'm either going to be disappointed or
angry,
surprised, or elated because they cast the exact person I wanted, which is a 0.00001% chance.
Now, do you think the Batman casting like curse is going to continue with this one too?
Like they're going to cast somebody and everybody's going to be mad about it?
Exactly.
That's the internet today. Everybody's mad about everything.
I'm mad.
I
don't even know why, but I'm mad.
They could announce the greatest, most awesome thing ever, and everybody would be mad about it. So maybe it's because I'm almost 40, but I'm looking at this and I'm like, I'm just going to go with the flow. Maybe that's the wisdom that comes with years of being on this planet and seeing this time and time again.
I'm right there with you, man. Let the chips fall where they may.
All right. So that is our exhaustive yet weirdly abbreviated discussion on.
This is very condensed, man. I wanted to spend at least another 4 more hours talking about Robert Pattinson, but I guess this will have to do.
Oh yeah, I mean, and we probably spent way too much time talking about other people that didn't deserve it. But final thoughts on live action Batman.
Okay, ranking top to bottom: Keaton, Pattinson, Affleck, and then Kilmer, West, and then Clooney, and then the serials I want. Yeah, they're on the bottom.
I might rate the serials above Clooney, to be honest.
Whoa, damn!
I think you would need to pay me to watch Batman and Robin.
You'd rather watch 3 hours of the Batman serials and then watch the hour and a half Batman Robin?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, I would.
Okay.
I think my final thoughts on it are, as a fan of the character of Batman who reads the comic books and reads the classic comics all the way up to whatever's releasing now, I just think it's a joy and a pleasure to be able to see an interpretation of that in live action on screen. Things we didn't cover, obviously, were the animated series, which we brought up briefly, which is magnificent vision in and of itself.
Quintessential if you're a Batman fan.
Quintessential is the perfect word for it. But just to go through all these different generations of Batmen and see them from the 40s serials to Adam West, to Michael Keaton, to the Schumacher films, to the Nolan films, to the poorly mismanaged Snyderverse, to now the Matt Reeves version, and looking forward to what the new Gunverse Marchione version is going to be. Muschietti, sorry. Marchione. Macaroni. Muschietti. Please forgive me. There's always something. I think one thing we've tapped into is there's always something interesting and good about each one, even the worst ones, like the Clooney one. There's always something good and interesting that taps into that special love that we have for the character. And so anytime Batman is on a screen in live action or in animation or whatever, I'm interested, and I feel fortunate that I get to live in an era where I get to see that.
Yeah, exactly. Batman has been around for over 80 years now, and there's no signs of him stopping anytime soon. So let's just enjoy what we have, and if we don't like what's new, we always have what's old.
Exactly. I can go back and watch Jack Nicholson versus Michael Keaton anytime I want, and that is wonderful to be able to do. And now I can watch this Matt Reeves Pattinson version, and oh my gosh, it's so good. And yeah,
you need to put away that erection, man. I can see it.
I thought you couldn't. That's why I was holding this pillow. Well, ladies and gentlemen, NBs of all sizes, that is our show for today. Again, this has been The Geek Seat with Ben Kliewer. I'm your host, Ben Kliewer. Joining me in the Geek Seat today is my hetero life mate and co-host, Detective Artimus.
World's greatest detective.
World's second greatest
That's
detective.
Fine. Ain't nothing wrong with Silver.
Right. There you go. And I guess my final thing to say goodbye is don't hate. Don't go out on the internet and hate. It's we're living in a wonderful time where we get all kinds of Batman, and just go out and enjoy life. Be safe. Take care of yourself.
And we don't deserve the internet.
Nor does it deserve us. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, you go.
No, you hang up.
No, you hang up.
Okay, fine. You can find us on all available You can find us all on... Let's try again. You can find us on all available podcasting platforms. Go ahead and like if you are watching on YouTube. Please subscribe to Movie Melee. Once again, I'm Detective Artimus.
And I'm your host, Ben Kliewer. You can find me online at all social media at BENKLIEWER. That's how you spell Kliewer. Hard to spell, easy to say. This has been The Geek Seat. Thank you very much, and good night.